of projects that will breathe new life into the historic Loretto Heights campus.
I'm just so happy that this is the first thing that we're celebrating here. It really celebrates community. Not only that, it celebrates the spirit of Loretto, service to the community.
The Sisters of Loretto called this 70-acre site home for 100 years. Founded in 1888 by Mother Pancratia Bonfils, the site housed and educated generations of students until Loretto Heights College closed in 1988.
1988 they left here, but their heart is still here. So to have the former dormitory classroom building become housing for first-year teachers, they'll find a home here.
In the Catholic tradition, May 12, today, is the feast of St. Pancras. Don't we know that Pancratia is watching over this new life?
The site was home to Takeo Loretto Heights College and then Colorado Heights College from 1989 to 2017. Once the college closed, the site faced an uncertain future. But Councilman Kevin Flynn immediately formed a steering committee to determine what would become of the area.
So we can't let this campus go the way of so much that we've seen around the country that falls apart, that's historic, that carries our legacy, carries our history. We can't lose this. What does the community want this to be? I'm standing here today in front of the very first thing that was important to people, and that was to house working families, because that's what the spirit of Loretto was all about.
What followed was a public-private partnership that included extensive community outreach and engagement.
The direction has always been to acknowledge the legacy of the Sisters of Loretto. Our goal was very simple: respect what was started on these grounds 134 years ago by Mother Pancratia, and create a natural project that lifts its community and celebrates its history. All aspects of the community voice challenge the project to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Because of the process of listening to community voice, the project does have a spirit. That is not to say that the community members, the Sisters of Loretto, or the city received 100% of what they were seeking. In many cases, we had opposing wishes that simply were impossible to coexist. But again, the results are amazing, whereas everybody got something.
The result of the process are 72 affordable units, from studios to 4 bedrooms, that can all be had from 30 to 80% of the area median income.
Families can live here, folks. Families can live here. That is something to celebrate. Families can live here.
The units are all unique and display the charm and character of the building. This includes the breathtaking 4-bedroom unit that was once home to the chapel.
You can see behind me we have historically preserved lighting, as well as reglazed and preserved windows. As Hartman Ely Investments is very good at historic preservation and pays great attention to detail. Now I'm in somebody's kitchen and dining room, and that's just the beauty of creativity shown in affordable housing here in Denver.
These units are just the start, as the future holds many more opportunities for both this campus and other affordable housing in our city.
I'm also proud to tell you that together with our partners, we have a strong pipeline of other affordable housing projects. Today, a total of 1,202 affordable housing units that have received city financing are under construction or preservation at 25 different sites throughout the city of Denver. We have an additional 779 affordable homes in the planning stage, anticipated to break ground approximately sometime this year, so I'll be at another ceremony. And so today, this is no short feat. We take one step forward with 72 units, recognizing the opportunity to house our families who are housing insecure.
Sometime in the future, this is going to be such a vibrant community. There's going to be senior housing, there's going to be the performing arts, there's going to be a community center, there's going to be workforce housing. There's going to be housing for people who are pretty well-to-do, frankly, because that's the kind of community we're trying to build down here.
Stay elevated by subscribing to the city's YouTube page and stay tuned to our social media channels for more content. Don't miss our new episodes of Elevating Denver, premiering each month. Thanks for watching, Denver.
Welcome to the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee of Denver City Council. The Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee begins now.
Well, yes. I went to Las Vegas for New Year's, and it turns out I'm too old for Las Vegas for New Year's. Yeah, that was a total strategic error on my part, I gotta say.
Good afternoon. Robin Kniech, Chair. Morning. Thank you, Councilman Flynn. When it's gray all the time, it's very difficult to tell what time of day it is. We have had the least sunny winter in Colorado's history, it feels like. I'm Robin Kniech, Chair of the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee of the Denver City Council. It's Wednesday morning, and I will have my colleagues introduce themselves. And do we have anyone online yet? We do, so we'll start with our members online. Thank you.
Too, and maybe the committee can investigate our weather forecasters to figure out why this wasn't called for this morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Stacy Gilmore, District 11.
Good morning, Jamie Torres, District 3.
Good morning, Amanda Sawyer, District 5.
Excellent. We have presentations this morning, and I will ask our staff to please come forward, introduce themselves, and walk us through.
All right, good morning, Council President, Madam Chair, and Council members. My name is Adam Lyons. I'm a Lead Housing Development Officer for the city's Department of Housing Stability. Here this morning to present kind of an overarching presentation on hosts' strategies around affordable ADUs in the city, as well as a couple action items today directly related to the ADUs, which I'll touch on in this presentation as well. We do have a couple partners with us today. Joining us from the Denver Housing Authority and the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, we have Renee Martinez-Stone and Shayla Moore. And with Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver, we have Laura Allen Hatcher, and we do have a couple others listening in virtually today, Corey Whitaker and Angela Casillas. So just to get us started today, HOST's 5-year strategic plan really identifies 3 strategies around affordable ADUs. The first is diversify housing choice through the expansion of ADUs and remove the barriers to construction. Next, evaluate the effectiveness of programmatic support for ADUs as a tool for mitigating involuntary displacement, promoting wealth building, and other positive outcomes. And the third is to partner with agencies involved in the development review process to assess the barriers to small-scale affordable housing, which includes accessory dwelling units. So this first goal, to diversify the housing choice through the expansion of ADUs and remove the barriers to construction, the first action that we did under this strategy was HOST applied for and received about $1.43 million from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA, for their Affordable Housing Development Incentives Grant Program, or abbreviated IHOI. And the purpose of this grant is to support ADU developments in the city, and really with the benefit of providing community benefits around ADU development. So these grants can be used as incentives for infrastructure costs primarily, so curbs, streets, gutter replacements, alleys, upgrades and expansions to utilities, transformer upgrades, and gap funding for ADUs. This is very important for the ADU programs because a lot of the costs that really drive up the development of ADUs are these infrastructure costs, making sure that utilities are connected to the ADU, making sure that sidewalks are up to code, and that any alley improvements that are required are completed. So these grant funds will help out two different agencies. We're going to pass these through. Two of the action items today are to award a portion of these funds to both DHA and Habitat for Humanity for their ADU programs. Next, and this is something that was in front of this committee about a month ago for an amendment to this program, but Host awarded funding to DHA for the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative's single-family ADU Plus program. As I mentioned, I brought an amendment back to this committee about this time last month to extend that contract and provide additional funding for the creation of additional ADUs under that project. The next is to evaluate the effectiveness of programmatic support for ADUs as a tool for mitigating involuntary displacement and wealth building and other outcomes. And again, this next slide was shared with this committee about a month ago because the WDRC ADU program is the only affordable ADU program that Host has funded thus far. This is the project that we have really the only data for. So again, to date, 12 ADUs have been completed. And here this slide just shows kind of the data around those 12 ADUs. Really positive outcomes thus far for this program. 10 of the 12 are BIPOC households. 25% are female head of households. 58% of the total units are 2 and 3 bedrooms, so larger family size units. And with the primary goal of this program is to mitigate the displacement of West Denver and to alleviate some of the doubled up households that are in this area. And really positive to see that the average tenancy in West Denver is 18 years, with the longest being 45 years and the shortest being 6 years. So all of these homeowners do have deep ties to the neighborhoods that WDRC works in. And all of the homeowners that are building the ADUs are using these ADUs to house either doubled up family or extended family, so that either the homeowner themselves are meet the income guidelines, or the tenants themselves would meet the income guidelines for this program. So in all, 12 ADUs have been constructed. There are several others that are in the permitting and design process. And as a requirement for these homeowners in this program, they must go through a HUD certified housing counseling. So anywhere between 4 and 6 households at a time are kind of going through that process of getting certified so that they can move into this program. And the third strategy identified in the Host 5-year strategic plan is to partner with agencies involved with the development review process to assess the barriers to small-scale affordable housing development, especially for smaller projects such as ADUs. So Host has coordinated with the Affordable Housing Review Team, or AHART, to include the ADU program into their review track. This has been a benefit across all the affordable housing projects that get accepted into this track. I've worked on several large-scale and small-scale developments, and they can't speak highly enough of what this group is doing to really enhance the review process. And then DHA has also reported market improvements in the timeliness for their ADU program, getting site and permit approvals. Next, and this presentation was given earlier this month to the Budget and Policy Committee, but the city's Community Planning and Development Department, their ADUs in Denver project has made several policy recommendations to City Council. Those recommendations that they presented to the Policy and Budget Committee are included as an appendix to this presentation. But just in short, kind of 3 overarching policy recommendations are just to make ADUs more feasible on a wide variety of lots that are already zoned for ADU development, making 1-story ADUs easier to build, and evaluating the requirements for lot size, coverage, existing structures, and owner occupancy. So now to move into the action items that we have on today's agenda. As I mentioned, that the city applied for and was awarded $1.429993 million from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs for the IHOA grant program. So the city intends to award both the Denver Housing Authority and Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver nearly equal split of these funds for their ADU programs. The first is the DHA WDRC program that we mentioned before, and that already has a city contract to fund the gap financing for these ADUs. And then another action item today is the Habitat for Humanity Villa Park project, which will create six single-family homes, 3 of which will have ADUs as well. So that program, which I'll touch on more in a moment, will be, it's a new construction program, so both the primary home and the ADU will be built in conjunction with each other, and as a requirement for the sale of these to the homes, homeowners must be at or below 80% of the area median income. So both of these contracts would expire in March 31st of 2024. That is that's the same deadline that the city's grant agreement with the state is. So the city is under a grant agreement with the state for these funds that expires in March. So we're hoping to get these dollars out the door as quick as possible so that both Habitat for Humanity and DHA can make those needed infrastructure improvements to their sites. So both resolution request 23-0043 and -0044 are related to really the pass-through of these awarded funds from the Department of Local Affairs to these 2 entities. And the third action item related to ADUs is resolution request 23-0045. And this is a loan agreement providing $575,000 in gap financing to Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver. And this is for their Villa Park project located at on Stewart Street, Newton Street, and Meade Streets in the Villa Park neighborhood. These are former city-owned parcels that the city donated to Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver. And as a condition of that land transfer, the city has already recorded a 90-year covenant on the property, making sure that these homes will be affordable in perpetuity. The project, as I mentioned, will develop 6 single-family affordable homes, 3 of which will have ADUs. And the really outstanding unit mix, very large size units will be created here. Just 1 2-bedroom, 1 3-bedroom, and then 4 4-bedrooms. And 3 of the 4 bedrooms will contain the ADUs as well. As I mentioned, initial home buyers are restricted to earning at or below 80% of the area median income. And the performance loan with the city would have a term of 5 years after the execution of the promissory note. That would be forgiven as each home is sold to an eligible home buyer. So again, just the actions requested today are the approvals of these 3 resolution requests. The first being the contract with the Denver Housing Authority to provide $693,810 in the IHOA funding for the ADU program for the related infrastructure improvements needed on their sites. The next is also related to the IHOA grant, and is to provide a contract with Habitat for Humanity for $736,183 in funding to the Villa Park project specific to the infrastructure improvements they need on those sites. And the final action item is resolution request 23-0045, and this is the loan agreement with Habitat for Humanity to provide the gap funding for the for the actual development of the 6 single-family homes, including the 3 ADUs that are also included. So at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions you all have over, either 3 of these action items today, or just host overarching strategy around ADU development, or especially affordable ADU developments. And again, we do have representatives from both DHA and Habitat for Humanity here to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you very much. First in our queue is Councilman Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adam, we've heard frequently that one of the barriers to building ADUs after they're zoned and permitted is the infrastructure. And so I just have some basic questions that maybe you can help me with, because it adds tremendously to the cost.
Absolutely.
And it seems to me with some projects I've seen in my district that outside agencies like Denver Water or others have a very hefty cost of entry. And so is it the practice that an ADU has to have an individual water meter, or can it take water off the single tap for the single-family home?
I'm not an expert on this area, but I do believe that it's, it could go either way, depending on kind of the site and the requirements. Not sure exactly if it has to be an individual, metered line that goes into the ADU, or if it can run off the primary.
Is that something maybe you could facilitate getting an answer from Denver Water
yeah,
for us?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. And then same with our wastewater, with the sanitary sewer line. Must there be an independent sanitary sewer lateral out to the street or back to the alley? Because if it's out to the street and you have a detached ADU in the rear, that's quite a trench.
Yep, absolutely. And that's one of the great benefits of these IHOI funds that the city received from the state and that we're passing through, is that tap fees, utility improvements, all of that would be included as eligible costs and can really offset those costs to the payment.
And then, excuse me, under this program, the habitat, the bill related to, the resolution related to habitat, there are going to be 6, 3 of which will have ADUs?
Correct.
But how many ADUs can we expect from the other contract?
So the other contract,
in other words, how far will that money help defray the cost of the sewer hookup, the water hookup, any other infrastructure, curb gutter? Do we have an estimate for that?
For the WDRC ADU program, so the initial agreement called for 17 affordable ADUs to be built, but with the amendment and adding additional funds, we're looking at creating 18 additional, so 35 altogether through that program.
Okay, thank you. And in relation to the ADUs in Denver project, we've been involved in that year-long process with the task force, and I had some data from Josh Palmieri in the planning office, and I asked, since 2010, since Blueprint, how many map amendments, not whole neighborhoods like we did in District 3 or in District 1, where we just remapped and allowed ADUs as used by right, but individual map amendments by homeowners who wanted to build ADUs. How many went through this council and how many actually got built? And the sad result is there have been 97 individual map amendments in that period. 10 went ahead and got built. And so I think folks who go into this process without their eyes fully open don't really appreciate how enormous a barrier the cost is, not just for the building, but for all the ancillary hookups and the things we demand. So I'm wondering, is there a way that we can review our requirements to make them less onerous? I don't have any particular suggestion, but I'm thinking of Nola Miguel up in Elyria, I believe, who was developing some townhomes up there and went through an enormously expensive and delayed process with Dottie over curb gutter sidewalk issues.
Councilman Flynn, I am sensitive to this is host that's in front of us, and we do have a few other council members in the queue. Okay. So this is probably the wrong agency to ask this question to. So I do want to just be sensitive to.
Certainly. Okay, let me just suggest then to agencies not here, like
Thank
you, that we take a look at our requirements and try to remove the barriers that way. In addition to subsidizing on the front end requirements that might not be necessary.
Yep, absolutely. And I do know that Host values these ADUs as a tool for affordable housing. So if any other developers other than DHA and WDRC and Habitat for Humanity has ideas to build affordable ADUs, then Host would definitely love to have those conversations and potentially provide funding to make those affordable.
Let's ask maybe as a follow-up question, maybe between Councilwoman Sandoval, who I would like to welcome to committee and who's the chair of LUDI. Can we do a joint email to Dottie and ask them what, if any, process they have? Maybe committee staff, Ann, could help us do a joint email as chairs. Would you be amenable to that? To Dottie, to ask them what process, if any, they have to reduce the burdens of infrastructure involving ADU requirements? And we will report back to this committee as co-chair, as a joint chairs, as a follow-up item, just to keep this process moving. We do have a separate item after this, so we have a hard stop at 11:15. So would that be amenable?
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilman Flynn? Great, thank you. Councilmember Sawyer is next. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. Really excited. This actually might be a question for Renee Martinez-Son, who I see is joining us. Hi. Thanks for being here. So WDRC's original contract with Host was for a specific area, and we came across a challenge with that when we were rezoning East Colfax for ADUs. We're now looking at rezoning the neighborhood next door to East Colfax for ADUs. So wondering whether that challenge has been addressed in terms of, would homeowners on the east side who might be interested in creating ADUs be able to access the program? Has this additional funding helped support that? And kind of what is, I think it's fantastic. I'm fully on board with all of this, and I think that the work that WDRC is doing is amazing. I also recognize that they are short on staff, short on bandwidth, short on funds. I think the partnership with Habitat for Humanity to help build these is amazing. I want it on the east side. So I guess my question is, can we, or does this funding and do these contracts allow us to potentially offer these same kinds of services on the east side of the city that we are offering on the west side of the city?
The contracts do, however, they are limited. So the original contract, what was approved by this committee about a month ago was the Second Amendment. The First Amendment did kind of broaden that a little bit so that about 75% of the units could be built, or I think it's 70-30 split. So 70% of the units must be built in the West Denver neighborhoods that they primarily focus on, but then 30% of the units could be built citywide where zoning allows. So, I'm not sure, and Renee, if you have any data on, projects outside of those West Denver neighborhoods, but it is allowable in our contract that up to 30% of that 35 number of total ADUs built under that contract can be built citywide.
Okay, I really appreciate expanding the scope of the contract, the physical locations of the contract, and then I guess my follow-up question for WDRC is there the bandwidth and the ability to service the east side? Are there conversations happening with, if not, are there conversations happening with other potential service providers who could provide those services on the east side, et cetera? Sure. And that's probably a question for you, Renee.
Good morning, Councilman Sawyer. Thank you for the question. Yes, we have gotten inquiries from East Colfax and other locations, and we do treat them as anyone else when they have questions and want contact. I think one of the reasons we don't see as much interest is it's that upfront education process that from a distance, it's needed, it's wanted, it makes sense, there's space, but it's the fray of all the details and the technicalities that Councilman Flynn identified, where we're not out doing education and open houses outside of West Denver. So we're not educating more people on the possibility and the technicalities that I think results in less inquiries. I think right now as well, 2022 saw, if we had not seen construction prices be their most unpredictable and highest in 2021, then the world topped that even more in 2022 when interest rates were changing so significantly. So that has slowed inquiries throughout the city. But I think it's really having the time and bandwidth to be out there, first of all, educating, and then secondarily, what happens before someone could be in the program is there has to be resolution of unpermitted structures, lot lines, a lot of technical issues that we don't resolve. We need someone to come to us with the zoning, with the space, so if they need to demo anything. And oftentimes many homeowners encounter, hey, this permit from 1998 wasn't closed out.
Right, we see that a lot.
Yeah, and so I think there's, though that technical support isn't available to a lot of homeowners to sort those things out. So we get their initial inquiry, but then they're working on those issues.
Right, and it's so much work and takes so much bandwidth that it's not worth it given the cost.
In many cases.
That's good to know. I really appreciate it. And I see that Abe is here in the background. And so hi, Abe, thanks for being here. Wanted to follow up with that. Thank you, Renee. Wanted to follow up with that, I guess, comment in terms of what CPD is doing to address some of those challenges, because that's in the planning department, right? If someone's coming in, and you're a planner, not in the building services department, so I acknowledge that you might not be able to answer that question, but it would be valuable to know whether there is a section of CPD that is looking at those kinds of logistics pieces of it, because we see that all the time. Right, we see somebody wants to do something to their house, and there's an 8-foot fence that they never got a Z-pin for, and there's no permit for, and then they have to go back through the process, and it adds another 8 months, and they have to get architects to sign it, and all this stuff. It's ridiculous. So when we see those kinds of things, that stops people from building ADUs, and we want people to build ADUs. So just wondering whether, and you can just nod your head or let me know later if that's. If you don't want to come up and just kind of respond. Thumbs up. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Abe. Thank you. Oh, he's coming up. Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sawyer. Abe Barch with Community Planning and Development. And I'll just give you the verbal thumbs up to yes, all these issues that we're hearing about, from tap fees to challenges with unpermitted structures when you're trying to come in to permit an ADU, and all of the things that can trip you up are all on our radar. So the ADUs in Denver project is a first step, and in the first step, we're just taking on the zoning challenges. So
right, okay.
The two pieces of it, like remove barriers, make sure that the requirements encourage ADUs that actually fit in with different types of neighborhoods. And so zoning barriers are things like the minimum lot sizes, things that make it hard to build one-story ADUs, which relates to the WDRC Single Family Plus program, and other barriers. So we're taking that on directly right now, and we'll bring a proposed zoning amendment to address those things shortly. The other things like challenges with permitting, and then sidewalk repairs in Dottie, and the things that are outside the city entirely, like Denver water things. Those are all things we're in discussion about as well. And the strategy report for ADUs in Denver, which I think we're actually posting today, does outline next steps to address those things. And one of CPD's deputy directors in particular, Jill Jennings-Golich, is really dedicated to ongoing conversations about making progress with all of that.
Awesome.
So
okay, thank you. Really appreciate that. That's it for me. Thanks.
Sounds like that shortchanges the email we were going to do to Dottie, so maybe we'll hold on that email. Abe, yes? We shouldn't separately. Abe, over here. No. It sounds like we should not separately email Dottie then about the infrastructure burden that Councilman Flynn asked about, because that report includes the infrastructure burden of sidewalk requirements and things like that.
So we are talking to them about that. Obviously, you're welcome to send your own email if you'd like.
Okay, but that report is inclusive of other agencies' responsibilities, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay, great. Council President Torres.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. A quick clarifying questions. 6 homes. Which homes will have the ADU?
3 of the 4 bedrooms.
3 of the 4, okay. And then the homeowner will own that ADU?
Correct.
Okay. What does that do to the purchase cost for the homeowner? Does that change in terms of how Habitat pipelines in families?
It will have a slightly higher purchase price, but it would still be affordable for a household making at or below 80% of the area median income. So no more than 30% of their income would go towards housing-related costs. So Habitat does a really great job. A lot of times they are the mortgage lender as well, so they're able to have a lot of flexibility about setting purchase prices, just to make sure that those, all homes, not just the homes with ADUs, are affordable for households earning, at that income level of 80%.
Do you know if Habitat has done any other developments like this where they're building an ADU for a homeowner?
Laura, yeah, come on up. Yeah. I'll ask Laura Allen Hatcher from Habitat to address that, if any other programs.
Good morning. We have not. This is a pilot project for us.
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. Laura Allen Hatcher, Habitat for Humanity, and the Government Grants and Compliance Manager. And this is the first program that we've had with ADUs and single family together. So it is a pilot project for us.
Okay.
To answer your question.
That's great to know. Thank you. Does that change anything in terms of how you identify that homeowner? Because they could rent it, they could, are you looking for an extended family group, anything like that?
Yes. So initially, our intention is to sell them to either large families that will use both units or an extended family with both units as their primary residence. And so to your AMI question and affordability, the larger families at 80% AMI actually have a higher income limit. And so yes, we will sell those properties together to that household at an affordable price, as Adam indicated, making sure that we do not provide a mortgage that's more than 30% of their gross income per month to pay PITI. And then ultimately there is within the covenants that are on those particular projects that if they do end up, they can actually end up renting the ADU, but they have to come back to Habitat to clear the renter by AMI as well as the rent limit based upon CHAFA rent limits. And then as time goes on, if that renter stays in place, then each year annually, we will revisit that and see where the renter's income is, make sure that the rent limit is still being met.
Mm-hmm.
And if the renter should, over time, improve their income situation to be more than 120% AMI, that would be the absolute limit. And so at that point, the homeowner would have 180 days to rectify that situation, or have that person move out, find a new renter at the 80% AMI, and sort of start the whole process all over again.
Got it. Okay. Super helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just want to highlight and remind folks the remnant parcels that the city donated to Habitat are truly remnants. They're not like our typical property, square properties, and so the infrastructure dollars that are going to help support the development of these parcels is so important. So thank you so much for seeking that out. There is a programmatic question I think I have for you to take back to host, and it's about, I think, the long-term kind of future of the ADU Plus program that WDRC is running. It's not the only program that WDRC does, and I don't know that it was intended to be permanently external to the city. So I think there is something for a host to consider in terms of either long-term support of this program or bringing it internal, because it's proven itself to be a housing stability success. So I think there is something to talk about when it comes to host's housing stability portfolio, and if this is something that we own and how. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Next up, Councilwoman Sandoval.
Thank you, Madam President, or Madam Chair. I think this question's for Habitat. How do people qualify for those who are watching to purchase one of these homes with the accessory dwelling units? Can you talk about your process, or do you already have people qualified?
Process for people qualified, that's hard to hear in here.
Right. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I could not hear you.
Yep. So how do people know about your program? How do people, do you do outreach to them, or do you already have people qualified for these 6 houses with the accessory dwelling units? So people who are watching in the public, we get oftentimes after committee, people don't understand how to qualify for these programs. They don't even understand where to go for these programs.
Of course. Thank you for that. Our website has our application process on it. It's habitatmetrodenver.org, and that's available to anyone with access to the internet. You can always give us a phone call. We have a homeowner services department that can provide information. But yes, once we are in a neighborhood, we do actually do door-to-door outreach with respect to what we're doing in that particular area. So once we get underway with that Villa Park development, that will happen as well.
Okay. Thank you. And just want to say thank you to West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, we haven't gotten anyone in the queue yet, but we have had open houses in Chaffee Park. And I do know that there are still, even though we have the accessory dwelling unit task force, there still are a lot of barriers. People can't get income qualified. People lose because of the zoning process and the permitting process. By the time they get the permit, oftentimes the interest rates have gone up too high, and then they can't get qualified for the loan. So there's like this cycle that people feel like they're sitting on, especially when it comes to accessory dwelling units. So anything that we can help to build these out throughout Denver. I think I only have 20% left of my council district to have accessory dwelling units. That will be up next, so then the whole entire area will have them, so people can qualify for them. So however I can get this information out for Habitat, for WDRC, please know that I'm a partner in this as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I just have a question as well, and it relates a little bit to the questions Councilman Flynn was asking, but there's two different kinds of infrastructure the way I see it, and probably this is a question for Habitat or DHA, WRDC, all these acronyms today, West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, which is a project of Denver Housing Authority. There's one type of infrastructure that's essential to build the ADU. And that I'm very, very comfortable financing, and I'm very, very comfortable, and it's important for us to be able to fund it. The other part I'm less comfortable with, and that is things that the city requires because you're touching a property. We then say you also have to fix the sidewalk up front. And this is this idea, and of course sidewalks are used by everybody, and we've had this historic system of saying, you know, the homeowner's responsible. We're in the middle of switching that system based on the ballot measure. Does anyone have a sense for me of how much of this funding is going for things that you would have to do just to make this ADU functional, and how much of this is stuff the city's saying, because you're touching this, you also have to improve these other things that are a little further afield of making the ADU functional? And if it's a ballpark, if it's your gut instinct, I'm just curious from your perspective, how much is going for the first and how much is going for the latter? And then my second question will be, you know, obviously we're a ways from the transition to this new ordinance system for sidewalks, but, you know, so maybe this is, you know, it's moot, but we should be using money to fund ADUs, not to be funding sidewalks, you know, where we have a new funding source. So it might be that this is just a one-time transitional thing, but I'm curious if either entity would like to comment on that piece.
Yeah, Renee Martinez-Stone with the Denver Housing Authority. It's an important issue, and I think that it's complicated. Even when we see a neighborhood plan recommend improved or better sidewalks for an area, which a neighborhood plan should. In some cases, that triggers in development review a complete sidewalk upgrade for a homeowner.
And I just want to clarify that. It doesn't mean there's no sidewalk there. It doesn't even mean the sidewalk's broken. It means you might be taking a 3-foot sidewalk and making it 6 foot at the expense of a low-income homeowner putting in an affordable ADU. Yep. Just to give that color for people who don't know.
Absolutely.
It's a big obligation to put on a low-income homeowner putting in an affordable ADU.
Absolutely. So to add to that, many of our underinvested neighborhoods have homeowners who are working class families who have achieved home ownership, who now want to invest in helping a family member to live there, and the cost for their ADU is higher because that infrastructure was not provided and kept up with the city's standard for sidewalks. So when we initially started working, we were encountering that. Property owners who didn't have sidewalks or who had the 3-foot sidewalks, and the standard was, well, you have to bring it up to the city standard. 5-foot detached sidewalk, in many cases where that sidewalk didn't actually exist anywhere in the immediate vicinity. In some cases, and we did document this, that resulted in anywhere from a $15,000 to $45,000 if you lived on a corner increase in the cost of your ADU, which absolutely just sunk the project and prevented it from happening. Absolutely not an equitable situation in policy. What we've done with Doty, and they've been fantastic in working with us, is they will come out to a site once a homeowner is enrolled in our program, which gives us the foresight to understand what those requirements would be. And in some cases where there is not a standard sidewalk anywhere nearby, they will go with the hazardous compliance, which is just making sure the sidewalk is safe. That can save a lot of cost. So because contracts are just coming through, I'd be happy to follow up with a more specific breakdown as to how the state funding is being utilized on a per project basis. It's probably not more than 50% is for sidewalks, and in most cases a little bit less being applied to the infrastructure dollars that can help a homeowner to cover some of the other infrastructure costs. The question was asked earlier, an ADU does, in terms of water and sewer, it ties into the main that's serving the primary house. They don't need their own unless there's unusual circumstances. And in those cases, that's an infrastructure cost, absolutely.
Okay.
I think we just need to watch that policy.
Okay, and I guess, if the dollars can come from the sidewalk fund to do this,
yeah,
and instead these dollars can be used to build more ADUs, I'd rather see that happen than have these dollars be used for sidewalks. So I'd like us to just keep an eye on that, and the timing might not work based on when that fund gets set up, but I'm just putting that out there. Councilwoman Gilmore's in the queue, and then we do need to cut off for our next item. So after that, I'll need a seconder in the system, and then we'll move the item. So Councilwoman Gilmore, bring us home.
I have a follow-up question.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I wanted to catch her before she went all the way back.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Renee, for sharing that information. I guess, could you, because if we don't have a citywide process right now, it's sounding like, and I want to make sure I heard you correctly, that if there are additional zoning issues, if a development review is triggered, then you have staff that will go and maybe facilitate the conversation with CPD, is what I'm hearing that you do. Is that right?
So we work with CPD with homeowners that are in the program. That means their site is eligible, they have zoning, they have the space, they have the financing, and they sign a program contract. That's a path to follow. A lot of homeowners get snagged because we'll check their lot and there will be an encumbrance on it. There will be a permit that's not there, or we'll look at the site and we'll see a garage or a shed that doesn't have a permit. In some cases, it's not clear. In some cases, it'll look clear and it gets snagged in development review later, and it could be a huge problem for a homeowner. So that process it doesn't have a clear lens always to identify issues that can stop a homeowner in their tracks building an ADU.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I think that's really helpful information, and I really appreciate this conversation because not every property owner in Denver is going to be able to sign into your program. And so that creates a gap, a massive gap that we possibly have in the city around creating a team or building up the staffing so that homeowners that want to explore an ADU, the city will assist them in looking at those encumbrances. How do you solve that? What are the next steps? Because right now, we have a fair amount of unpermitted structures in District 11, and so I'm sure that there would be a piling up of barriers around why you might not be able to, afford an ADU, and I can only imagine the legal implications that you need a lawyer to review, lot lines, et cetera, and so I'm really happy that we're uncovering some of these issues and can hopefully flag them to develop solutions to them so that we're able to do this, but not then put that cost, all of that cost back on the property owner. If,
I'm sorry, we have to close out. We have a mover and a seconder in the system. Councilman Flynn has moved, Councilman Sawyer has seconded. So colleagues, are we good with moving these forward? 3 items, 43, 44, and 45 to the floor. All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for our partners for being here. These will move on to the full council. We now have a team from the Department of Safety to give us a briefing on the Assessment, Intake, and Diversion Center. I have a bill number here, but it's a briefing, so there is no bill associated with this, is there? Okay, I don't know why I have a bill number here, so it's just a briefing. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff, introduce your team that's with you, and take it away.
Good morning, Madam President, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Jeff Holliday, and I'm the Chief of Staff for the Department of Safety. I'm joined today by a few of my colleagues, Carlone Manuel and Wendy Shea, to speak with you this morning about the AIDS Center. Before I get started, I'd also like to recognize Carol Peoples, who is in the audience today from Remerge, who has been instrumental in assisting us at the AIDS Center with developing a community-based referral network. The AIDS Center, we have worked to model the AIDS Center after the broader framework of social determinants of health, or the underlying conditions in the environment where people live, work, and play that affect a range of environmental, sociological, and health conditions. It also serves to provide alternatives to arrest. Deflection programming is chief among the services provided at the AIDS Center for certain state and municipal offenses. You'll hear more about this later in the presentation, but I did want to, by way of framing, start to outline that. As we proceed with the discussion about the AIDS Center today, I want to also just keep in mind what the AIDS Center is not. Firstly, the AIDS Center is not a diversion program in a traditional legal sense. Again, Ms. Shea will speak more to this later in the discussion, but let me say at the outset that the police are not initiating criminal charges as a condition of participation in the program. Neither is the AIDS Center an appropriate situation for people experiencing a behavioral health crisis. While the AIDS Center will work closely with the behavioral health crisis response system in the city, it is not appropriate, at least as an initial response, especially for people that are at imminent risk of harm to themselves or others, or gravely disabled, as that is defined in the mental health statutes. Finally, before I turn the next portion of this discussion over to Carlone, I wanted to just spend a second addressing some of the underlying tenets of the program. The AIDS Center, importantly, the AIDS Center is committed to practicing through a trauma-informed and person-centered lens in its effort to address service gaps. As I mentioned, the AIDS Center is rooted in the broader framework of social determinants of health, and to that end has worked to incorporate responsive services within the center. Finally, the AIDS Center is designed with an eye toward working collaboratively with other alternative response models to continue to deflect individuals from jail. And with that, I'm going to invite Carlone up to engage you in a conversation about the operations of the facility.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Council Chair, committee members. Thank you for having me. I want to discuss some of the operations part of the AIDS Center, and I will start with more or less the logistics of the AIDS Center. The times we're open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. We have providers that have established their hours of operation because we needed to have that warm referral within the AIDS Center. We are really pleased to have Carol Peoples of Emerge here to help us with a lot of the warm handoffs in the community and throughout the city. The community space is also used for trainings. It's also used for hosting a number of classes within the center. We have an organization, Community Works, which is already in place and hosting classes, trainings in the space. The entrance to the AIDS Center is west facing. It's at 1370 Elati. There are two entrances actually. There's one closer to 14th Street, and then there's one further down the block. So there are two different entrances to the center, but mainly the one closest to 14th Street is the one that's used. We have contracted security on site. We are working with them to make sure that they know how things run in the center. We have our security cameras already up and running. We have the facilities available, and it has storage lockers in there because we're trying to remove some barriers. If someone comes in and they have, a lot of stuff with them, we have somewhere they can put it. We have a kennel for pets. If someone comes in, they have a pet, and that may be a barrier to them getting services. We want to make sure that we have the pet safely in an area that they can go in and receive the services. We also have sort of a small kitchen area where we may have packaged foods for our clients to use. There's also a nursing area, sort of a nursing lactation room. One of the things I'd done previously was notice that if there are mothers that are coming in and they have to breastfeed, they have to go to the restroom. We didn't want to have that. We want to have something separate, private, something that they feel, and very clean. There's also a children's play area, which is located next to that. And we were very strategic in putting them next to each other so the parent can always maintain a purview of their child. The services and resources that we have in place, we have housing navigation, substance misuse support, and I can, if you want more details about who's providing what, I can do that at a later time. Mental health support, food resources, hygiene products. We also have our LEAD program, which is their law enforcement assisted diversion program, is also located with us. We have veteran support services, case coordination, outreach court, which was hosted there on the 14th of December. We served about 8 to 10 clients at outreach court, and they came into the center because they weren't able to use the place that was previously scheduled. We do have sober living services, birth certificates, identification, employment preparation, and attached to birth certificates and identification, we will have DMV to go on the last Thursday of every month. So that ties into folks coming into the center, getting served, being able to receive the services because they have proper identification. So our pilot process started on November 21st. We decided to put it into place and build it as we go. We wanted to knock down a lot of the issues that may come up in starting a program. So we have had over 40, this has changed since we started this, so it's close to 62 people that have been served since we started, referral, partner referrals, walk-ins, self-identified needs that people come in for birth certificates, identification, housing, transportation. There's also GED test and support that we've put into place that we were going to connect people to if they need that service when they come into the center. Some of the top services are sober living, substance use referrals, birth certificates, IDs, workforce employment assistance. As I mentioned before, Community Works is in place and they're doing some of the workforce services for us. We have more of our participants come in the AM than we had in the PM. And we're looking at exact times also to the notice. If someone comes in at 4:45, we're closed at 5. We're not going to shut down at 5. We're going to make sure they get the services that they need, and then at that time we will close. Our pilot district is within DPD District 6, and the anticipated launch date is late January, maybe the beginning of February. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to our Wendy Shea so she can give you more information beyond.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Wendy Shea, Special Counsel to Safety. Before I talk a little bit about the pathways to access the AIDS Center, I just wanted to underscore again, this is not diversion in that legal sense. as Jeff said. What this really is a deflection. It gives our officers the opportunity, in lieu of arresting and putting somebody in that criminal process, to take them to the AIDS Center and hopefully get them connected to services. And I say hopefully because there's no criminal charges, and once the officer takes someone to the AIDS Center, their participation is voluntary, meaning that should they choose not to engage in the services, should they choose not to use the resources, should they choose to walk away, they can do so, and there's no further legal consequence. And they're advised of that by the officer before. They get the choice whether or not they want to go to the AIDS Center based upon the charges. If they do, then at that point, the officer takes them, and if the person should choose at any point that they no longer want to participate, that is absolutely their choice. So there's 3 pathways to accessing services at the AIDS Center. The first pathway is those walk-ins, right? Anybody can come to the AIDS Center that may need services. The second is the outreach referral. Most of that is what Carlone was referring to when he's talking about these over 40 referrals that we already have. It's through our street enforcement team. It's through the STARS process, and it's also through our DPD homeless outreach team, but also officers can refer. We've got any of our partners within the system, if they want to refer them there, they can certainly do that as well. And then we have this pre-arrest process that we actually have rolled out to DPD. It's District 6, as Carlone said, that where it's been piloted, and that's what we have is they can deflect, so they have to have probable cause to arrest. In just a minute, I'll show you what those charges are. And if there's probable cause to arrest, then again, they can exercise their discretion, and in lieu of pressing criminal charges and actually arresting, they can take the person to the AIDS Center with that person's consent and again, give them the opportunity to connect them to services. Again, completely voluntary as soon as they reach that AIDS Center. So as soon as they are transported there, if the person walks off, says they don't want to participate, they absolutely can do so. There's going to be no further law enforcement action. No arrest record is created, but I want to make sure that it's clear, right? Under Colorado law, our law enforcement officers are still required to record every contact they have with individuals. So there will be recording of that information pursuant to Colorado law, and that's part of the information that's reported to the state. Eligible offenses for pre-arrest deflection. There's 3 state-level offenses right now and 5 municipal-level charges. We have state-level prostitution, level 4 drug felony, possession of a controlled substance, no intent to distribute, that's the lowest level of drug felony there is. Level 1 drug misdemeanor, possession of controlled substance, again, no intent to distribute. Then we have our municipal level charges, prostitution, shoplifting, no restitution, trespassing, disturbing the peace, not domestic violence cases, and public fighting. We wanted to give you kind of an idea of why we decided to pilot in District 6 police. These are actually our council districts there. We had our data analysts take some of our general offense reports and start pulling information and seeing where some of these eligible offenses, fell. And where we found is most of them were in the downtown area of District 6. I note that you'll see this very bright area in District 8 as well. I just wanted to tell you that that is actually 2 businesses that are there that pull a lot of the shoplifting charges. So that's why we thought it would be better to pilot it in 6. And we waited for just a bit to make sure we could get things stood up, to make sure that we had the services available and that we'd, kind of gotten some of the kinks, so to speak, out of the system there. So just briefly, so in December, we rolled out a policy to DPD, and there was also a training bulletin. We were conducting roll call trainings with our DPD officers in District 6 too, again, to allow them to ask questions, to make sure they understand the process and how this is going to work. If you want to see the policy, it's updated in the DPD manual. It's the section 116.01. I will tell you, if you Google it, what you need to do is you need to go to the DPD page, go to the bottom and look at the operations manual. If you just Google DPD operations manual, you're likely going to get an old manual. And then just engagement, just to talk to you a little bit about this as well. So preliminary discussions before the AIDS Center was developed was under our former police chief, Payson, who was involved in that process. We had PACE, the DA's office, DDPHE, DPD, of course, and the Denver Sheriff's Department. We also had LEAD involved in that process, as well as the Department of Safety. But since that time, we have been engaging more and more individuals, especially with our policy and procedure development concerning the AIDS Center. For example, we have reached out and been working with the public defenders' offices. We have done tours and reached out to OIM, and OIM has been through the monitor's office. We have had the Citizens Oversight Board out there. We've had the Chiefs Board, council persons have been out there too. If you haven't had the opportunity to have a tour and you want to, just reach out to Carlone. He's happy to provide that to you. And then we're working with our providers as well and making sure that we're discussing, again, processes and procedure, working on getting those MOUs in place so we can have the sharing of information and doing as well as we can to make sure that when the person is there, we're able to provide the services and connect them to exactly what they need. And if we can't, figuring out how to get them there. And with that, we're ready for questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Members may recall there was a somewhat terse exchange in this committee a while back about the AIDS Center. I had a lot of questions that I did not feel the agency could answer, and I want to just say that we spent a lot of time together. In particular, I think, Wendy, your becoming involved has helped to really, I think, clarify and create a clear purpose and set of protocols and training, and I feel much more comfortable that this program is on track and ready to launch. So I just want to say thank you for the time that everyone spent and bringing this presentation with the clarity and focus. So just now, as chair now, I'm really pleased to have you back in committee with the update and appreciate all the time we spent in between with what you're bringing here today. We will now go to the first member in the queue, which is Councilmember Sawyer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, you guys, and I can't wait for my tour. I'm really looking forward to seeing it in action and learning more about what it looks like. So I did have a question on the physical services provided at the location. I was wondering if you considered mail services, mailbox services, when you're looking at things like people need IDs, people need birth certificates, people need all this stuff. Like, they need a place to mail those to, right? And it's one of the things we hear from our affordable housing providers and shelter providers all the time is so difficult because they end up being the mail address for a lot of people. So I just don't know if you've considered that. Is that something you've looked at or something you're looking into for the future?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We have considered that. We've considered it, and we want to actually have it happen. We're just worried about it, the address being flagged. By if there is so many people, applying for birth certificates, and that single address is being flagged. So I think there's a further discussion that needs to happen so we can get it the address not flagged. And that's been some of our community members have brought that up and said that, yeah, we have mail come here.
Right.
If it's official documents, it tends to get flagged in certain systems, and we want to make sure we take care of that first. But we're open to it, absolutely, because it makes it easier for someone to come there, get their birth certificate, IDs, and then they start a slew of services that they need. It makes it really an easy pathway. So yes, we would hopefully we can get to that point. We can have it done.
Okay, absolutely. That's great. I have so many questions about this flagging thing, and also I reserve judgment on whether the federal government could get it together to actually do something like that. So I hope that there's a way around that that is not like utterly bureaucratic in every way, shape, and form, because I think it would be really valuable an added service to provide to the community to have mailing services allowed there.
Yeah, and we've had birth certificates sent there already.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know. And then Wendy, you had mentioned a couple of the thank you for that. Wendy, you'd mentioned a couple of the different agencies that you were working with, but agencies I didn't hear included in there were Denver Human Services or Department of Housing Stability, et cetera. So wondering whether they're coming in now that it's set up or kind of how that works. I just think many of the cases that come there have underlying social causes that could be addressed by some of those other agencies. So we got to make sure that they get on board.
Yeah, and they actually have, I kind of gave examples, but didn't give all. We've engaged with hosts, and certainly Carlone can speak to this as well as Denver Human Services. I understand Denver Human Services is going to be there, and we're working with hosts to get them there too. And Colorado Coalition for the Homeless as well is going to be there too.
That's awesome. I was wondering, in addition, whether you had considered, and this might not be information that you have kept yet or keep at all, so you know, if you might not be able to answer this, but organizations that work with immigrants and refugees, right? So we see people come, they're undocumented. Because they're undocumented, there's no pathway for them to become documented. It's a federal problem, but it leaves us with the social problems that come with that in terms of, you know, housing instability, job instability, need for shelter, all of these different things. So wondering whether you've partnered with any of the organizations that we have in the city that are amazing, that are offering services to our undocumented residents that might be able to provide some of those services there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic point. I'm not sure that we have. Carlone would need to speak to that, but if not, I think we should, and that it is kind of a work in progress, and I know Carlone is getting more and more services as we go, and that would be a perfect opportunity to serve that population as well. Yeah.
So far, we have about 30 community providers, organizations that are working in different levels, different areas of the community. I think it's a great idea. It would help us, and it would help us serve even, you know, a broader population. So, yeah, a fabulous idea. If we haven't had it in place, or if one of our community organizations is not already serving, and they will be in place with us, we'll be happy to have it happen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Is there, I guess I'm asking, who do we email, or how do we, like, do we put them in touch with you? Is there like a main inbox, or kind of how does that work?
I can give you my email right now.
I will not write it down. Can you just email me?
Either way. Sure, feel free to email me, and what we do, we'll sit down, we'll reach out to those organizations, have them give us a schedule. We put it on a calendar. We already developed a calendar of services in place, and we will put it on the calendar and try to find somewhere to fit them into the calendar to make sure the services happen.
Okay, really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Council President Torres. Mic on. Thank you so much. A question about how folks are coming to the AIDS Center. Slide 8 has 3 buckets. How did the 40 folks that have been served so far access the center?
We've had it through DPD, have had drop-offs. We've had our SET team. A number of the outreach teams in the city have told people to come to the center. People have walked in on their own. We've had community organizations make referrals to us, also to word of mouth. We have one client that referred like 6 people. You know, and that one person was going around telling folks, hey, these are services I received here. So it's a number of buckets. We're not into just one bucket. We have a number of buckets that we get people coming into the center.
Okay. It made me think about a contract that we recently approved through Department of Public Health and Environment for $2.3 million to Servicios. They let us to set up a community network of providers for folks coming through the STAR program. And STAR is mentioned in being able to bring folks to your center. How will STAR know who to take somebody to if they're in need of services?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So as you know, STAR has specific requirements when they go out because they're responding to matters that we don't really want police involved in, right? So they're making the assessment there. If we're talking about some type of behavioral mental health crisis, STAR is going to handle those. These are the situations where STAR might have responded. It's not really a person in crisis. They've determined that they could use different types of services, and that's where the AIDS Center comes in.
Okay, so those would not be, they would know that this is not the circumstance we would take somebody to Servicios for. Okay.
Yes, or even the Solution Center. Yep,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I appreciate that. I don't think I have other questions yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gilmore.
Thank you. Thanks, Wendy, and the entire team for all your work. And so I want to make sure that this is really interesting. And so if someone is contacted by STAR, DPD, who it doesn't matter who, and they are carrying 1 to 4 grams of fentanyl, it's intended for personal use. There's no intent to distribute, and they're contacted by an officer and in lieu of an arrest for that, they could go to the aid center. And is there any requirements after they go to the aid center? Do they have to sit down with a counselor for a certain amount of time? They'll go through the intake process, but they're there for a certain period of time. And if they decide that the services that are being offered they don't want to take part in, of course they don't have their 1 to 4 grams of fentanyl anymore because that's been confiscated, but they are then free to leave.
So you're exactly right. The fentanyl would be taken. They would be taken to the aid center, but again, at that point, it's going to be voluntary. So there's not a requirement of you have to do this. We connect them, hopefully, with the resources, and they will do it. But should they choose to walk away, then they can do that. So we're hopeful. We know that even with DPD doing this, it may take a couple of times, right, to get them to go there and hopefully get them at the right moment where they're ready to accept those services. But we're trying to keep those people out of the system that we can hopefully help, and also keep our police contacts more limited so they can get back out on the street and in services and dealing with the more serious types of crime.
Okay. All right. That's very helpful to have that clarified. And then I guess, since this is newer, it was launched November 21st, I would be interested in how many of those folks that you are contacting that have drugs on them with no intent to distribute, it's for personal use, how well we are doing through the center to connect them up with services, or even a counselor talking with them about, do you have family in the area that is looking for you? Do you have family ties do you want to make some phone calls? Can we help you in any way? If there's an individual that is in that situation, it would just be good to know how successful we're being, especially if it's personal use and there is no intent to distribute. Because I guess I'm also concerned that they get contacted, they come in, their personal use of drugs, and with fentanyl, it's not like you can detox independently from fentanyl or heroin or other drugs, and we're confiscating that, then they're maybe leaving voluntarily, they're right back out on the street trying to get that drug. And so it seems like there maybe needs to be, like, what would it look like an overnight stay, or how successful are we in getting people into 1 or 2 day stays in shelter to continue the conversation. But then again, knowing that you can't detox from those drugs independently, and a shelter situation might not be the most appropriate to help somebody in that case.
Yeah, so just to answer you probably in 2 separate ways. One, I would say, is data is being collected, but since we just launched it in DPD, we haven't had any circumstances, I can confidently say, where we have done that yet. But data will be looking at that to kind of see the process. I also want to flag, though, that LEAD is part of, they have a presence at the aid center. We're working with LEAD right now to get it set up more, so that's going to be the actual diversion that we think of when we think of the legal diversion. That'll give us kind of that, piece, the consequence piece that you're talking about, or a little bit more assistance, so to speak. But LEAD now will still be meeting and seeing who might be a candidate for that program and provide a little bit more of that oversight now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I look forward to updates. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving online to Councilwoman Sedabaca.
Thank you. On the note of LEAD, a lot of what this center is doing feels a lot like what LEAD already does. Can you articulate more like the difference between the roles that LEAD and Aid Center will play? It sounds like the referrals you guys are getting for the Aid Center are coming in exactly how the referrals were coming in for LEAD. So can you just like describe the different roles going forward?
I think we also have Tian Tong here who runs LEAD for us. So if Tian would come up as well, I think that would be helpful. But so here again, because LEAD does have that community referral piece too, and I'll have Tian talk more to that since she is the expert. Here with AID, we're talking about, again, the deflection process versus the diversion process, so that's the real difference here. There's no criminal charges pending, whereas with the LEAD program, if we have law enforcement involved, there's criminal charges that are typically held in abeyance. If they proceed and do what they are required to do as part of the program, then those criminal charges aren't initiated, no proceed. Here there are absolutely with AID, there's no criminal charges brought at all, and again, then it's voluntary once they're taken there to participate. With LEAD it wouldn't be, because there would be a consequence with our law enforcement, right? If there's charges held in advance, they don't participate, don't do what they're supposed to do, then there would be moving forward with criminal charges. But Tan, I'll go ahead and have you speak a little bit more to that.
Sure. Yeah, currently LEAD operates in a similar model to the Aid Center eligibility, in that it's more of a pre-arrest diversion model. We are having conversations about what it could look like to to potentially hold a charge in abeyance of certain intake criteria being met, so that we can foster that engagement a little better. But as it stands, anyone coming into the Aid Center through a police diversion will screen for LEAD eligibility. I think the distinction, Councilwoman, around your question about the difference in services is primarily the intensive case management that's provided through LEAD, and the ability for LEAD case managers to provide wraparound services, more integrated services on a longer term basis.
So I'm curious about a couple of things. One, I think it was months ago we asked for a roadmap of how all of these different programs flow together, or intersect or overlap. Has that been created to articulate these different entry points and overlaps?
That question, Councilwoman. I've been following up on this since budget hearings. The question was specific, I believe, to the outreach teams, and unfortunately, it is not completed yet. There have been several versions of it that were done between the agencies, particularly DDPHE, our health agency, and HOST, our housing agency. I checked on it again last week. It's still being edited, and it is not yet final, but they are still working on it. So I continue to follow up on it as committee chair, and I will continue to follow up on it until we receive what we requested. So thank you for asking about it, but it is not yet final, is what I was told last week. Thank you.
Whoever's working on it, I just hope that it includes both LEAD and the Aid Center, since we are trying to bring in some of the same exact people that we're targeting on the streets for different reasons. So let's please make sure those are included. I'm curious about the metrics of success we're using to evaluate the Aid Center. Do we have those fleshed out? Are those in the process of being fleshed out? Like, how are we going to know if this is successful?
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman. So historically in the city, we tend to use simple descriptive statistics to explain programming. We're trying to shift away from that with the Aid Center and start and move toward time series data, because for us it's more important to understand When we put somebody in touch with a resource that sits in the center, how much lag time occurs from the time that we have that initial touch point until the time that a service is received. So from our perspective, that's what we're interested in tracking at the Aid Center. And then separately, each organization that works within the Aid Center still has all of their typical requirements for data collection that they report out through whatever mechanisms they have to report on. But for us, we want to start looking more intently at lag time so that we can identify where there are system gaps and then start to strategize how we deal with those system gaps to create a quicker response for people that are in need of a particular service.
I think that's great to check out. That's very much an output and not an outcome. And so I encourage you all to set up some outcomes that you're tracking, especially because when I hear an instance like the one described by Councilwoman Gilmore, you're bringing someone in because they have a substance abuse problem. The services that they need are substance abuse treatment, free probably. And outside of the jail, that's not readily available. And so if we're bringing people in to tell them that there aren't resources for them, I wonder if we're spending our resources wisely. I'd like us to be tracking outcomes. So please note that, and please get back to me on what the outcomes will be that we're tracking. I also have a question about people who were involved in setting up the Aid Center. Were there any justice involved people who had input, or contractors or organizations? Did LEAD have a say in how the Aid Center is filling gaps or meeting needs that they could not meet? Who was involved in designing the program?
The short answer is yes. So early on, we had multiple organizations that Second Chance Center was involved in initial conversations about the development and design of the Aid Center, as was Servicios and other community partners. And so throughout, we have worked to include justice involved or formerly justice involved folks and other individuals with lived experience to help inform the development of the programming at the Aid Center.
Was LEAD involved? LEAD involved? LEAD involved?
I believe she asked if LEAD was involved in the design.
Yes, actually not under TN in this case. When LEAD was still with Kevin Kelly at DPHE, he was intimately involved with the program.
Would be helpful if you could provide a list of the people who were involved. Also, I'm curious about the cost of the Aid Center and how it compares to maybe the Solution Center.
Yes. So firstly, on the list, we will certainly do that. I don't recall that the Solution Center is a contract that's monitored through DPHE. I don't know what the fiscal realities are for that program. For the Aid Center, in fiscal year 2022, we appropriated $131,400 in general fund and capital facility funding through the Caring for Denver ordinance of $747,000 to help with the build out of the physical space. And then in fiscal year 23, we're projecting about 278,000 in expenditures. There's an important note here, though, to make in that the aid center relies necessarily, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, because we use social determinants of health as a framework, there's not a single city department that is responsibility for the totality of resources that are responsive to the range of social determinants of health. That's why we've invited so many people into the space. And these other city departments, especially Denver Human Services, Office of Housing Stability, and others, also have budget ramifications in support of the center. And I don't have eyes on what their specific expenditures are, at least at this point. But I'm happy to have a conversation with them to see if I can get better clarity for you.
That would be great. What exactly does the 270,000+ pay for?
Building that the aid center is currently in was an empty shell when we moved into it. And so we had to build out that space to be able to receive services and customers into the space in order to serve their needs. And so that is what the Caring for Denver portion of the capital facility fund was used for.
I understand what the capital money was used for. What does the operating budget pay for? Like X amount of case managers, an admin assistant, like what does it take to run the center?
The capital fund, the administrative cost funds 3 positions, one of which is Carlone, who's here today, and 2 that we're currently in the process of hiring. One is a licensed clinician to help support clinical work at the space, and then a case coordinator.
Got it. Thank you. That's it for my questions.
Thank you.
Thanks. I am going to bring us home, given the time allowed and my questions. I'd like to build on the data question, and I noticed you actually didn't mention a data person, and I actually am curious about the data platform, and I think it's a really important one. And so I think I'm going to kind of roll a bunch of questions, and it might be that we need to continue the conversation after committee. So, so one is, you have a set of officers required to record contacts, but how is it that they are coding those so you're able to separate out the AID center drop-off? So one, confirming you are able to determine all the data points that are AID center on the police side. But then secondly, who's responsible and what platform are they using to then record all your other walk-ins, and or is there a separate duplicate data entry point for the police drop-offs? So for example, if let's say you have 20 walk-ins and you have 20 police drop-offs, are there 40 data entry points for all of those folks on the service side, so we know everything that's happening with them? And you know, there's anonymous data entry, which is 40 people got navigation and 20 of them got a housing referral and 25 of them got a substance abuse referral. But I can't tell, did 36 of them get 2 services and 22 of them got 4 services? There's a lot of ways to do data. And if I can't tell the cumulative impact, did one person get 6 services? Or, there's a lot of ways to do data that's sophisticated, and there's some ways that are really simplified. Continuing on, there are questions then about non-anonymous data. And in this case, non-anonymous data that is protected, so you know who they are. I don't want to know who they are as a council member, but if you know who they are, and then you can tell me, did I reduce the odds of them getting arrested? This matters to Councilwoman Sejdabaca's question. If our purpose here is to reduce arrests, you have to have non-anonymous data. You actually have to know who you are serving by name, and then you have to check, were they arrested later? How many times were they arrested? Are we interested, and then the question becomes, do you have an academic partner, right? Where there are potentially some tracking systems. Do you have a control group where you're looking to see, of 50 people who were arrested for these state offenses and municipal offenses, who did not get any of these services, how many rearrests did they have? And then of 50 people who were not arrested and got these services, what were their rearrests, and is there a difference? That's the way to do this well, in my humble opinion. And, you know, if we're serious about actually having not just inputs and outputs, but outcomes, those are the types of things we'd be thinking about. And it takes time to do, and it takes a system that has an ability to track individuals by name, by contact information, and it's sophisticated, and you know, and it's not just like, here's a phone number, did you call it or not? I need to actually know if you called the phone number. It's so, I'm asking a lot here, and we got 0 time left, but I think, you know, give me your shortest answer, and then maybe we continue the conversation, because it kind of gets at whether this is a triage program or whether we're trying to build something that is kind of a lasting, you know, outcome-based system. And, you know, there's not a wrong answer, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, so some of that's easier, like officer contact information is going to be there. There's also an intake at the aid center that's going to indicate how they got there. Some of this goes into those MOUs that I referred to, that we need to have our partners, because we have to get that information sharing in place so we can have that output data. We have not talked yet to an academic partner, but I love that idea, and I think that gives us another opportunity, right, to do that data collection. But again, that's the next step in our process, is meeting with our partners and making sure we have that information sharing process, whether it's the person's name or even if it's connected with a number so they're not identifiable, which is what I'm thinking we're thinking with an academic partner. So there's a lot of pieces and parts to that, but yes, absolutely.
You have to have a name to check if they're arrested later, sorry. You have to.
Well, yeah, but if it's a number, what I mean is identifiable, but then you can track back so you can do that. But yeah, so there are a lot of pieces and parts, but the first step I think we have to do is get the MOUs with our partners to see how we can share that information, because until we learn how we can share the information, it's hard, right, to figure out how to capsulize that and report it out. Because you're right, if we can't report it out, then we can't show whether it's working or what changes need to be made.
Well, I look forward to staying in touch, and everybody, thank you for being here, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.